Oh, good evening, sir.
How are you?
I feel terribly underdressed. My apologies.
Well, Arthur told me when he booked me for this slot that you have a new policy now that guests have to wear suits, to add a bit of class to the place. And I feel pretty let down here.
I mean, you're looking sharp. So you were at Leinster House for the day. I presume this masterpiece is not a prerequisite to be a journalist in Leinster House.
Masterpiece defined as
your suit, your look,
suit. Okay,
sharpness,
sorry,
yes.
That's what I was told. Gavin Riley told me that, gave me kind of a crash course on what I needed. One of them was jacket and tie. If you want to go into the press gallery in the Dáil, which is just above where the Ceann Comhairle sits, you need a jacket and tie.
But do the male TDs wear a tie?
No. Well, sorry, some do, but most don't. I mean, there was a couple of jeans wearers around there. Yeah. Now, look, I'm sitting in a suit and I'm looking on high. Am I down judging them in their jeans? Yeah, I bloody well am.
That's a strange rule.
Yeah.
We'll go all Mick Wallace, but you lads wear a suit and tie.
I know, because I had a Torino jersey on under this as well.
Okay, well, listen, I'm glad you've left it on for us.
Etc.
You've left it on for us. You obviously think it looks pretty good.
No,
nice change.
Well, because obviously I was going back to the office and it would be too awkward to go home and change, and then I just decided that it looks good, so let's keep it on.
It does look good. Come on. So, look, a few things going on. There's never been a week like it in Leinster House. The backbench TDs are loving life. They've never had ratings so good. Let's start today with the motion on the floor of the Dáil, because there was a separate Oireachtas committee on the future of sports broadcasting. But let's go to the Dáil, because Labour, through their Labour TD Aidan O'Riordan, were putting forward a motion in effect calling for investment in domestic football, and this of course follows the FAI application recently for €860 million to be invested in Irish football over the next 15 years. €860 million is what the FAI are looking for. We'll take a little flavour of what Aidan O'Riordan was saying in Leinster House today.
Maybe we are the only ones who think that Wes Hoolahan is a god, that Ronaldo is a cod, that Stephanie Roach was robbed for the goal of the year, that we alone can tell a good player from a great player. Minister, football is Ireland. It inspires, it lifts, it binds and it empowers. The FAI report spells it out. The lack of basic facilities for young players, especially girls. Lisa Fallon described it so well at our Oireachtas briefing last month, how every girl in Ireland knows the skill of changing her jersey in the open air. It's just not good enough. It's not good enough that so many of our League of Ireland grounds are crying out for redevelopment. How will we support these young players who stay in our system until they're 18?
Impassioned.
Yeah, it was really good, I thought, and quite historically adept. I checked the records. It's the first time that Ronaldo as a cod has been read into the Dáil record. So a little bit of history there today as well. It's obviously Aidan O'Riordan has led this entire thing. Like, his Labour colleague stood up and kind of commended him for driving it forth as well. And I like that idea that, that football is Ireland speech. Like, he talked elsewhere about how, Ireland is partitioned, football is partitioned. There are famous Irish sports figures who suffered abuse at the hands of like Christian Brothers schools and so forth, or were scorned in Christian Brothers schools, and is that not a story for the rest of Ireland as well? And said more contemporaneously that the football is a representation of the true Ireland in all of its diversity and everything. So yeah, it was a pretty strong opening speech.
Were many people in the chamber?
At that stage, I think 12, including it, maybe 13. It seems like there was a Healy Ray out of shot underneath us, but there no, not not a huge representation. The Sinn Féin benches filled up as it went along, as a number of their TDs came in to say their piece. It seems like TDs and so forth of various places to be across, running from committee room to debates and votes in the Dáil and so forth. So no, not in terms of government wise. It was the Minister Catherine Martin, the pretty much effective Minister for Sport, the Minister for State for the Department in Thomas Byrne, and Frank Feehan as well, who's part of the government.
So Aidan O'Riordan, support football. Football is Ireland. It's very hard to hit back too strongly against all that. How did Catherine Martin respond to the request?
Yeah, well, she said that the government would not be opposing this motion, and she applauded the motivation behind it. There are a few kind of more tangible elements of this motion, like it includes backing the infrastructure plan that the FAI have put out. Like, they need, I think, is a €500 million odd from the government in that, and they also want to increase the betting tax to 3%. That was in here as that they had on calling on the government to back that, and to also do a review of the sports capital grant programme. So did we have any commitment from the government that we'll raise the betting tax or we'll give you all the money for the infrastructure plan? No, we didn't. But we didn't. They didn't say no either. I think the most interesting part of it, and definitely the part of it by which the FAI are most encouraged, is Catherine Martin's stance on the betting tax.
Okay, well, I think we have a clip of Catherine Martin. We've two clips of Catherine Martin, so we'll skip to the one on the betting tax if you can, Pete. So this is a story. Dan McDonnell wrote about this a couple of months ago. The FAI, is part of their application, I'm sure, we're cognizant of the fact that there is huge money bet on football. Football doesn't receive the money raised, it goes to other sports, and so that was put to Minister Martin again today, as Gav said, and she has said in response that the increase in a gambling levy is not for her to decide upon. So here's Catherine Martin responding to the betting tax request.
There are a number of elements to this motion which do not fall under my remit. With regards to an increase to the betting levy, this is a matter for the Minister for Finance, and it is understood that money raised from the betting levy goes into the General Exchequer funds rather than being ring-fenced for particular purposes. But I would, of course, support any measures such as an increase in the betting levy, which could in turn feed to increased funding for sport more generally.
Okay, well, we'll see how that plays out. It is worth stating that Thomas Byrne, he labelled the FAI's request for the 863 million over the next 15 years as, quote, ambitious. And I must say I did, because I think context is all important here when we're talking about such huge figures. We're spending 2 billion on a hospital, maybe 863 million over 15 years, maybe that's okay. But it was said today, I think by Catherine Martin, that the FAI's request of funding over the next 15 years would basically equate to the current budget for all sports.
Yeah.
And suddenly I thought, well, that really is ambitious.
Yeah, it was actually Thomas Byrne who said that, and it's a good way of contextualising it. He also described it as ambitious, and that when I hear that phrase, I'm always reminded of the Yes Minister sense of, yes, a very brave decision minister. It's a very ambitious plan indeed.
Well, I'm no political expert.
Yeah,
but I think it's unlikely that they're going to give the FAI the entire sports budget for every sport.
Yeah.
Over the next 15 years. I wonder, did the FAI do some due diligence on what might be a realistic request?
They have, in terms of, certainly, if you look at the infrastructure report, there's various sources of revenue, and it's not just coming from the Department of Sport. The betting tax is one of them, obviously. Now, there was, we won't get into the weeds on that, but that is obviously overseen by the Minister of Agriculture. It's the policy of it seems to be the remit of the Department of Finance, so that's separate. There are other funds as well, like Brexit funds and so forth. I don't have the document in front of me, but they aren't just asking for the money from the Department of Sport.
And in effect, how much taxpayer money they're looking for? Is it €500,000?
I think I'm just going off memory. I think it's somewhere in the €500 million mark. Okay. Over the course of 15 years. Some of it is front loaded, obviously, because it's such basic emergency to get these these done.
And did you get the sense that Labour via Aidan O'Riordan are saying, give them every cent they want?
Yeah. Oh, they're fully backing them. Like the theme of this was very much that the FAI have now taken their place among the competent sports bodies of the earth. Like they've got their act together. Jed Nash said at the end that, look, the FAI have got their act together now. It's time that we kind of support this. And he had a good line coming back on the Thomas Byrne describing it as ambitious. He said, well, it's not really ambitious at all, because the aim of this money is just to get Ireland up to European standard in all of this.
Yes.
Richard Boyd Barrett did point out that we're bottom of a league table across the EU in terms of spending as a percentage of GDP spend on sport. Like it's 0.4%, like Malta and Bulgaria.
We all saw that a couple of weeks ago and thought, well, hang on, that's not good.
Yeah.
So if we're bottom of the GDP spend on football across Europe, we can certainly address that. So your sense from today then, government are going to give something, we just don't know how much.
I don't know, that's still a long way away yet, to be honest. But it's broadly, for football to be ventilated in the Dáil that way is rare. It's also, another little vote of confidence in the FAI that they're now, seen as more serious people again after years and years of anything but. As regards what they ultimately get, it's a long way down the line. But it's just, it's just on why I think the betting tax thing is interesting on what Catherine Martin says. It just shows that they're lobbying and they're making it a public debate. It's just kind of inched on and shoving on like slightly new frontiers that, the FAI obviously brought it out. They got a lot of pushback on it. Michael Lowry even said in the Dáil today that they made a mistake in looking for it to come out of the horse and racing fund. But it just goes to show that like the debate is still alive. They're pushing it and pushing it. And look, it's hard to imagine that anything major will happen before the next election. I think the aim is the FAI is to put this on the slate and make it the kind of thing that people can build campaigns on.
Okay. The Oireachtas committee then on the future of sports broadcasting.
Yeah.
Most people were probably too busy to go to the pub for a second day of Oireachtas committee viewing.
Disappointed in you all.
Give us the run of this. Who were the star attractions? What was the flow of this one?
Well, this basically began as the genesis of this was the GAAGO controversy earlier in the year, which is only recent, but it's about 3 major controversies ago. It's been a while. But rather than just bring RT and the GAA, and I think the committee agreed, that we'll make it the future of sports broadcasting. So it was kind of a crossover episode. You had the IRFU, the GAA, the FAI, Sport Ireland, and the Federation of Irish Sport in for 75 minutes, I think, in front of the committee. And then the broadcasters came in. So Declan McBennett representing RT, he's led his sport there. You had Virgin Media there. You had a body overseeing regional radio broadcasters. Virgin Media were there. Sky TV were there. TG Carr were there. It's a lot of people, and it was an absolute pig of a format where the politicians had 4 minutes to ask their questions. We've seen with the RT thing, how difficult it was for them to get anything in and get any kind of proper questioning in 10 minutes. This was 4 minutes, and they were very kind of quite strictly policed.
And were all of those representatives of all those broadcasters in at the same time?
The broadcasters were in at the same time, yeah.
So some of them, I presume, weren't even asked a question.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot asked of a couple of them. Obviously, in terms of the governing bodies, the GAA dominated things because this was effectively a cross-examination of GAAGO, an open name. The IRFU, life must be great at the IRFU. Like they had asked hardly any questions could go.
Did I mention we're world number 1 in the men's game at the moment? But
that was in their own.
But I can't talk now. We've got a World Cup final on Friday. But you go ahead.
Poor Jonathan Hill of the FAI was accused of conflating the nation and the state by a Sinn Féin TD in his opening statements. It's just like he's probably rifling through De Valera's constitution as it is. But no, it was mostly GAAGO.
Right. Okay. Well, I think we have some clips. I think I did read one piece saying, if you want one, simple message from today, GAAGO's here to stay. It's profitable and they're in no rush.
Well, it's profitable. I mean, it yielded €4 million. It's going to yield €4 million for the GAA this year. We didn't hear about the costs. So, I mean, I assume it's profitable. I mean, they didn't say anything otherwise. But the scale of that profit, we didn't actually hear today. We heard a few of the figures. Maybe they're in your clips coming up. But in terms of the costs and what the GAA are going to make out of this, we didn't actually get that figure.
Okay. Well, we'll hear from a few different people. So, for instance, Tom Ryan, Director General of the GAA, he says most of the money that they earn will be made by people in Ireland who are paying for the service as opposed to those abroad. So we'll have a sense here of Tom Ryan from the GAA at this Oireachtas committee now.
The venture was initiated in, I think, 2014 with the specific purpose of addressing the audience in the diaspora. What changed in terms of the COVID pandemic, clearly people couldn't go to games. We saw a demand for games, and we saw a responsibility on our part to be able to provide some means of diversion for people, I suppose. So we kind of tore up the broadcasting model, and I've mentioned in my submission that we don't see that every game can feasibly be broadcast or should be. We did that during COVID, or as best as we could, but clearly there's a capacity limitation on the part of broadcasters. So we did it through GAAGO, and at that point then we morphed, to use your phrase, from an overseas and an international provider to the domestic market. We learned a little bit from that experience. We learned a couple of things. First of all, we learned that there is an audience for people to stream matches in their homes, and it wasn't just on the part of national GAA. That was done for club games all over the country by county committees all over the country. We learned too that there was a market for it, and we saw the flexibility that it afforded. So with that in mind, gave us pause for thought as we embarked upon the next set of negotiations and the next set of sale of cycles. We had a look to see would that model possibly serve our interests in the broader scheme of things, and the conclusion was that it would.
Okay, and right now, in terms of the income accruing from GAAGO, how much of that can be attributed to viewing abroad and how much here in Ireland? Or have you done that analysis?
You'll forgive me, Deputy Canon, I don't have that analysis at my fingertips. I know that the total income that we will earn from GAAGO in a year is approximately €4 million. The predominance of that is GA games. There are other small sources of income, but I don't, off the top of my head, know what the breakdown is between international and domestic. I'm quite happy to venture that the domestic is greater.
So that's a sense of Tom Ryan. We're here with Gavin Cooney here in studio, who was at the Oireachtas committee. The other headline-making aspect is the viewing figures. So they say the majority of games, I mean, you'd love to know, is this 95% of them or 51% of them? But the majority of games, somewhere between an audience of 1,000 and 1,500 people, jumped out as being quite low. The argument, I guess, against too much panic on that point is that these games just wouldn't be available anywhere. So it's not necessarily always about big audience. It's about showing games which wouldn't otherwise be on TV or on GAAGO domestically. And so, yeah, there might be a small number of people watching those games, but it's better than them just not being available. That's the argument against that. And then they topped out at 120,000 for Kerry Tyrone. They had a couple of games over 100,000. I guess the comparisons are interesting when we tried to find similar level games to Tyrone Kerry. So for instance, another quarter final, Donegal Kerry in 2019 had 437,000, and a quarter final in 2022 between Kerry and Mayo had 547,000, and Kerry Tyrone, akin to Kerry Tyrone this year, albeit in a semi-final in 2019, had 545,000. So I guess, as is always the case with free-to-air versus subscription model, the free-to-air numbers completely dwarf the numbers paying to see the sport. So whether that prompts a kind of discussion across the GA fraternity over the next couple of months, like, think of all the eyeballs missing out in these games, is going to be interesting.
Yeah, now one of the things that was told to me after the committee, that, you know, these are streams, so like industry practice would be to kind of multiply that by 2.5 to get an audience figure. Now, I don't really know the
because of illegal streaming.
No, not necessarily, just because the amount of people sharing one stream basically around the same TV.
Oh, I see.
I'm not really sure as regards that, but obviously, you know, I think 120,000 is probably decent, but the better comparison is the figures for Sky. Like, these games got on Sky previously, but we don't have those.
Yeah.
Obviously, the free to air figures will be much larger. Now, there wasn't much reaction or rumination on the quality of these figures. Otherwise, like so much of the conversation was around what Donal Cusack, the Donal charge on the Sunday game, was that games were picked and high-profile Munster hurling games were put on GAAGO. Partly, obviously, a decision partly made by RT allegedly to drive subscriptions to GAAGO. Now, that was rejected strongly by the GA and RT, and they explained it by saying, look, we agree these packages before the season. GAAGO gets Saturday games, RT gets Sunday games, and it's the CCCC, the Central Competitions Control Committee, who decide when the games are played. The GA and RT don't have any representation on that body, so, you know, we play the hand we're dealt. It's effectively. So, like Declan McBennett said, like around the All Ireland football quarterfinals, RT requested to show Dublin Mayo and Kerry Tyrone, but the CCCC came back and said, well, Dublin Mayo's on Sunday, but Kerry Tyrone Saturday, so you'll have to be happy with Dublin Mayo, and then the Cork Derry game that was staged that day as well.
And I presume somebody in the committee asked RT and so Declan Bennett by extension about the conflict of interest between advocating for RTE and the licence fee payer, and also being board member of GAAGO and wanting GAAGO to be a success. Yeah,
he rejected any claims of conflicts of interest, and he explained it because he says that RTE's interest in GAAGO allows them to screen more free-to-air GAA games than ever before. And this is probably my misinterpretation of what is a circular economy. but and listeners, please don't doze off at this, but the profit that RTE make from GAAGO, they use to buy rights in the National League and other championship games that otherwise wouldn't be shown on RTE. So RTE's profit from GAAGO is then given to the GAA for the rights to screen more GAA games, particularly the National League, throughout the year. So like Declan McBennett admitted that the previous charge that RTE a few years ago didn't show the National League, so they just popped up in May and then packed everything away as soon as the All-Ireland football final was over in September. He said that used to be a fair criticism. We wanted a year-round footprint, I think is his phrase, so now they're showing National League games, and part of the way that they fund this is by using their profits from GAAGO.
And did the committee largely accept that, or did anyone say, hogwash, it's about the most important games, that's what your priority should be?
Broadly accepted. A couple of people did come back and just effectively repeated the old don't low criticism, but not many people came back. I can't overstate how bad the format was. I mean, 4 minutes, loads of different deputies, tight for time, with a whole load of people to ask questions of. There was a couple of points that Declan McBennett really wanted to get across, so he begged the chair's indulgence in his own phrase in getting those across. He really wanted to make clear that he's never taken, it hadn't been suggested anywhere, I don't think, but he made clear that he's never taken any money, and never will in his role as the director of GAAGO. Okay.
And then just a last very quick one. It's also made a headline or two. Jonathan Hill swung by at the very end of the FAI, and interesting revelation that they're in talks, or certainly they've had a talk with Sky Sports over showing League of Ireland games.
Yeah, past tense and hopefully future tense. They're not in talks with them at the moment, but there had been talks with Sky Sports to show League of Ireland games. Jonathan Hill said they had progress, but they walked away at a late moment, in his phrase. They hope maybe they'll come back to the table again in the future. But look, one of the issues, it goes back to what we said with the FAI, it goes back to what we were saying at the beginning with facilities. Like, I mean, like the broadcast facilities are so poor in so many of the grounds. It stymies opportunity for broadcasters to come in and so forth. So
Sky expressed a concern about that.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, well listen, I think if you're in a tie much longer, you're going to pass out, so we'll bring this to a close.
Also, formal shoes, they get less comfortable as they go along. There's no such thing as breaking them in.
Yeah, you were definitely an elastic tie man at school, I can tell that. No, I'm joking. You're looking very dapper. Gavin Cooney of the 42, thank you so much.